So this is the review for the Unit 1 quiz in chemistry. First question, how would you report this measurement over here on the right-hand side? We're looking at a graduated cylinder, and it looks like there are measurements at 4 milliliters and 5 milliliters, and then there are lines in between every 2/10. So this would be 4.2, 4.4, 4.6, and up here 4.8. And it looks like the water is right on the line that is 4.8. So if you look at the choices, we can cross out 4.4 and 4.40 because it's not at the 4.4 line, it's at the 4.8 line. So the question is it 4.8 or 4.80? The rule with recording your measurements is you always want to record one more digit than your measuring tool has. So this has a line at 4.8. So if I think it's exactly 4.8, I am going to report it as 4.80. So whatever marks your ruler or beaker or graduated cylinder has, you always report one extra place beyond what's on the instrument. So since this one goes to the tenths at 4.8, I'm going to report to the hundredths at 4.80. Which prefix in the metric system means 1,000 times smaller or 0.001 or 1,000th? Well, the answer here is milli. Millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. A milliliter is 1,000th of a liter. Kilo means 1,000 times bigger. Centi means 100 times smaller, or 0.01. And then micro means 1,000,000 times smaller. If it is 32 degrees Celsius outside, what is the temperature in Kelvin? Well, remember, Kelvin is the scale that's based on absolute zero, and there is never a negative number in Kelvin. The way we convert from Kelvin to Celsius is that Kelvin equals the number of degrees Celsius plus 273. So if we do 32 plus 273, we get 305 Kelvin. So that would be answer B. If you needed to convert from Kelvin into Celsius, you would subtract 273. Number 4, why do we use the Kelvin scale for temperature? Well, the answer is here that we want, when we're doing calculations, it makes it much simpler if everything is on an absolute scale, which means there's no negative values. So this is what the actual answer is in this choice. It makes all of the temperatures that we use in our calculations positive, so you never end up with a negative answer. Number 5, if you drop a box into the ocean with a mass of 12 grams and a volume of 10 milliliters, will it float? Yes or no? You need to remember for this that the density of water is 1 gram per milliliter. Anything with a higher density, greater than 1, would sink. Anything with a lower density, which would be less than 1 or a decimal, will float. So we have to determine, does this box have a density that's greater than or less than 1? Density is equal to the mass divided by the volume. Well, we're given the mass of 12 grams, we're given the volume of 10 milliliters. So if we plug those numbers in, 12.0 divided by 10.0, well, right away you can see that the number on top is bigger than the number on the bottom, which means the answer is going to be bigger than 1. If you do the math, you'll see that it's 1.20 grams per milliliter. Since the answer is bigger than the density of water, this box would sink. So the answer to the question is no, it will not float, it will sink. If the answer was less than 1, it would float. If 2 boxes have the same mass, but box A is twice the size of box B, which one is more dense? So remember that density is how much mass is there in a certain space or volume. Well, so we've got box A and box B. It's rough, but A is bigger than B, but they both have the same mass. So in box B, you have the same mass crammed into a much smaller space, which makes box B more dense than box A, because it's got the same amount of same amount of mass, but spread out over a bigger space. So that would be A would be less dense, B is more dense. The question is which is more, so the answer here is B. Which prefix in the metric system means 1,000 times larger? The other question was which is 1,000 times smaller. That was milli. And 1,000 times bigger is called kilo. So a kilogram is 1,000 grams. A kilometer is 1,000 meter. Kilosecond, that's 1,000 seconds. Centi again is 0.01. Milli is 0.001. And micro is 0.000001. So make sure you know these prefixes: kilo, centi, milli, deci, micro. There was a list of prefixes that you need to know, and you need to know what they mean. 1,000 times bigger, 100 times smaller, and so on. Which of these instruments would you use to accurately measure the volume of something? All of these can be used to measure volume because they're all containers that have markings on them. This is called a flask, an Erlenmeyer flask. This is called a beaker. This is a graduated cylinder, and this is actually called a volumetric flask, just a different type of flask. Well, the one that we typically use in the lab, because it is the most accurate, is C, the graduated cylinder, because they typically have the smallest markings, which means the most accuracy, the most decimal places. So you could measure the volume with any of these devices, but the most accurate is going to be the one that's the smallest, with the smallest measurements on it, which is the graduated cylinder. You measure and calculate the density of 3 samples of iron, and you get these answers: 7.94, 7.92, 7.91. If the actual density of iron should be 6.98 grams per milliliter, are your results accurate, precise, both, or neither? Well, precision means your answers are all close together. They agree with each other. You get the same answer every time. And these 3 results are very close together. So they are precise. The question now is it precise and accurate, or just precise but not accurate? Well, accurate means, did you get anything close to the right answer? I would say here the answer is no, because the accepted value is close to 7. Your answer is close to 8. So I think you were precise because you got the same answer every time, but not accurate because your answer was not close enough to the right answer. And last question on the review: what is the volume of a 1.9 gram sample of copper if the density is 8.93 grams? So again, we're using the density formula, which is the mass divided by the volume, except this time we're trying to find the volume instead of the density. We're given the density. So for this, there's this little triangle that you can use. Mass is on the top, and then density and volume are on the bottom. So density equals mass over volume. That's the formula for density. And then if you wanted to find the mass, it would be the density times the volume. And if you want to find the volume, it's the mass divided by the density. So that's what we want here. We want the mass divided by the density, and that will give us the volume. So the volume is the mass of 1.9 divided by the density of 8.93 grams per milliliter. So when you do that math out, you find that the volume is equal to 0.213 milliliters, which is answer choice A. So these are the types of questions that will be on the quiz. If you have any questions about these types of problems, or there's a particular subject in here that you need review on, please ask at the beginning of class. We'll take a few minutes to review, and then we will have the quiz on Wednesday.